Well, everybody, I'm Cantonese Cat. Hey, everybody, Cantonese Cat here. I don't have my usual mic. I'm not in my usual setting. And today I'm going to be pretty busy. So I'm just going to take a few minutes, go through some of the observation I have on the market. Because I haven't really done videos for a while. I just want to share with you my thoughts. Really, the key theme here seems to be rotation. We did a triumphant live stream on Tuesday evening, and Tracker, the Great Maspy, and I were talking about this possibility, but really seems to be playing out here in real life. You can see this is happening across both crypto, where Bitcoin's rotating to other things. I'm going to show you here in a second. Also in the stock market, where large caps indexes are also rotating to other things. And then on top of that, even international markets are starting to kind of showing like, a little bit of sign of strength here. So just go straight into Bitcoin here. You can see how it has been kind of hugging my horizontal Gann level here on this weekly chart. After it breaks each of these levels, it usually goes to the next one and consolidates. Go to the next one here, consolidates. Go to the next one here, consolidates. And back test them. And now we're at the level where we are just hitting resistance here at the Gann horizontal line, having a hard time pushing through around 117,500. And during the entire time when this is happening, guess what? Ethereum is showing some great signs of strength here. When Bitcoin was doing absolutely nothing, Ethereum basically just had a wick that went all the way back up to its previous, all-time high over here, and wicked above of it, which is promising. I think we're at a very, very similar juncture over here this cycle. As we're over here this cycle, as we're here over this cycle, Ethereum just does these things over and over again. It has a very tight trend line here, breaks down, it had a little bit of a false breakdown, freak everybody out, and next thing you know, it just decided to just make all-time highs after that. Same thing happened last cycle during COVID, where everybody was scared. Next thing you know, grabbed liquidity and just made all-time highs after that pretty soon afterwards. So far, we have a huge base here that's being formed. It broke down underneath this trend line, had a little bit of a false breakdown here, back tested, pushed through, and we are potentially about to make some pretty all-time high stuff over here. Now, Ethereum generally lags behind Bitcoin, and the large caps such as Chainlink, ADA, XRP, those also usually tend to lag behind Ethereum. You look at Chainlink, there's really nothing too bearish about this Chainlink chart. You can see I have a Gann chart here that's showing some great market symmetry. Basically, it is spending time stuck between these two arcs over here. It looks like we have broken above this arc and kind of back testing of arc here so far. If we're able to find some pretty decent support, I think we're going to go up and push through to some of these potential levels up here above, one level at a time. But I think it could get up to the 30s here if we're able to find support over here. If you're also kind of looking at the monthly chart without looking at the Gann here, you can see also some of the things that Chainlink's trying to do is trying to break above the Ichimoku cloud over here. So those are large caps that generally lags behind Ethereum, but eventually I think liquidity is going to roll into these large caps. Another large cap that's also lagging is Dogecoin. They finally made its way inside the Ichimoku cloud here. But just like every single cycle, even back here, when Ethereum was mooning, Dogecoin was still consolidating sideways for a couple of months before it really was, taking off here. So I think Doge is also going to end up lagging behind a little bit. Now, these are larger caps beyond Ethereum. Ethereum is going to be the largest altcoin here. I do think that money is probably going to rotate into things like Chainlink, things like Dogecoin, and then after that, it's going to rotate into a lot of the more, mid cap, and it's also eventually going to go into the small cap and micro cap, where there could be some pretty eye-popping numbers that could happen with those potentially if the cycle plays out in a very similar manner as it usually does. If you're looking at the stock market here, you can also see that the QQQ is starting to kind of get a little bit tied here, got a little bit of a rounding over here, whereas IWM is having a very, very different look, where it just looks like it wants to really challenge the previous all-time high over here again. If you look at the Fibonacci level, you can see how it's kind of broken about the 0.886 so far, and it's showing some signs of strength here to get into the week. We already on the last week have a close about the 0.886 over here, and if we end up closing about the 0.886 here for a second week in a row, that would not be a bearish thing. That would actually be quite bullish, and that we're set open for a road after this huge liquidity grab and a V-shaped recovery to make some, potential all-time highs here pretty soon. If that is the case, and you're talking about QQQ, SPY, these large cap stocks are rotating into more speculative, higher debt, but higher growth potential companies. This actually would bode very well for risk-on sentiment. On top of that, if you also look at the ARK fund from Cathie Woods, you can also see that it's just been recovering very well, forming higher highs and higher lows, and we're just at a monthly ARK resistance over here. We're trying to push through it 2 months in a row. Hopefully this is not distribution. Let's see if it pushes through, then we go a lot higher, and then risk on sentiment could be pretty decent. Even large caps are going through some pretty decent things here. If you look at the triple average QQQ or NASDAQ fund here, that also is starting to make, potentially make all-time highs over here. It's already wicked above and make some all-time highs here at the wick. So we'll see how it goes moving forward. Gold, I'm a little bit conflicted. I can see potentially make another leg up, to the 4,000s. But I can also see this being a distributive top over here. Now, if gold end up topping over here in April 2025, then really risk on sentiment would come on, because last time when gold topped around August of 2020, that's when IWM was really, starting to kind of run just a couple months later. So if gold ends up topping or is showing some, exhaustion with another leg up, I think the money could end up rotating into more risk on assets like IWM, like Bitcoin, like altcoins. And that would bring on a lot more risk on sentiment. This is kind of what I'm feeling here with the pulse of the market right now. On top of that, I also wanted to just spend a little bit more time talking about international market. As you can, imagine, it's not just IWM looking like this. Again, I just wanted to show you, QQQ is looking a little bit more rounded here. SPY is looking a little bit more rounded here. IWM is just kind of going pretty strong here. Now, one stock market that I've been keeping an eye on is the Hang Seng Index, and it's been breaking the 0.618, and it looks like it wants to get to the 0.786. So there might be some strength here with the Chinese market here, potentially relatively soon. If you also look at the Japanese market, the Nikkei, that also is showing a little bit more impulsive behavior. That seems to be a little bit more impulsive than, the large cap US stocks. So there could be some rotations going on here with the international markets here as well. I generally don't like to play international market stocks because the reason why is just a little bit riskier, and I don't really feel like I need to do that if there are some domestic US, smaller cap growth stocks that I can potentially looking into in terms of the technicals. But these are the kind of things that I'm kind of looking at right now. With that said, those are kind of my overall thoughts when it comes to the market. I think that if we are rotating from large caps to small caps, if we are potentially rotating from gold to the more risk-on assets, if we're rotating from Bitcoin to altcoins, and if we're rotating a little bit more towards the international markets, it signals more risk-on sentiment to me than the market topping. Even though, and I have, a little bit conflict on this, just to be fair, I cannot be bearish on the market when things are holding the monthly Tenkan on Bitcoin. I cannot be bearish on that because the bear market happens when you break down below the Tenkan, and there's no signs for that. A lot of people are looking at bearish divergences. If you're looking at the RSI, you can see a little bit of tiredness here in Bitcoin, but maybe this is just a rotationary weakness here rather than cycle top weakness, because a lot of the cycle top indicators still haven't really been hit. You can also see this bearish divergence here on the weekly too. You have a trend line here for Bitcoin that hasn't really been broken. I see all of these things that people are talking about. And they're worried about Bitcoin topping because of that. But just based on the cycle behavior for the market, it just does not seem that we're at the area of the cycle where this is the top, and I am still remaining pretty bullish on Bitcoin, on risk on assets, and on small cap stocks moving forward. Those are just my thoughts. They're not absolute. They can change, but I've had those thoughts for a long time. And it's kind of interesting kind of seeing things kind of playing out here. Usually these things take time. which is why I'm starting to really seriously cast doubt into the 4-year cycle theory. I actually think that Bitcoin has been running more closely with IWM cycle, with small cap cycles, rather than running the 4-year cycle with halving. But that's just my theory, and you can subscribe to different theories that fits your investment and trading style the best. All right, guys, take care. Bye.